Welcome to the Leader's Pause, where leaders like you tune in to find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in with best-selling author, speaker, and coach Hal Runkel as he helps you take back your time, your energy, and your decision-making power. All you have to do is learn to press your own pause button first. So, take a break, take a breath, take a knee, and learn to access your greatest human superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. It's time to find calm, get clear, and level up. The Leader's Pause starts now.
Good evening, good afternoon. I am thrilled that you are here. This is the Leader's Pause, and I am your host, Hal Runkel. And before I talk about me, I would rather talk about you. In particular, I have a question that I want you to consider your initial instinct as to how you answer it. And so it's a simple question. It's a philosophical question. Can people change? Simple enough question. Can people change? Now, it's interesting. I'm asking this question, and you are tuning in on something called the Transformation Network. So it would seem that if you're viewing this, or if you know me and what I do, the answer is obvious. Of course, people can change. Why would we be talking about transformation if they can't? But let's not be so quick to be sure that that's how we would answer it. Can people change? Because what I've found often is that we may say we believe, of course, that people can, yes. But sometimes what we really mean is we hope people can, or we want to believe that people can. Regardless how you answer the question, I believe can say a lot about you. And what I'm more interested in is the question. I'm more interested in the question underneath the question. And that's a theme throughout every show that I'll ever do, is I want to look at the question. And I think of questions kind of like waves, but the question underneath are like currents that are far more powerful and shaping the waves. And I want to know, what are the questions driving this? And one of those questions may be not, can people change in some philosophical way? It might be driven by, can this specific person in my life make the change I so desperately hope they will? And maybe that person is you. Will I ever make the change? So what we're going to do is unpack the question, and then we're going to look at the questions underneath the question. And then we're going to look at the ramifications of it. Let's go back to it. Your gut instinct. Can people change? My coach is a guy named Sven Erlandson. You can find him on TikTok as he's the badass counselor. And he always does this thing with me, which is great, where he'll ask me a question and say, look, gun to your head, question, give your first instinct, and don't be afraid to change your mind. Change your mind 5 minutes from now. Change your answer. Fine. But what does it say? Can people change? Do they change? Have you seen them change? Is it truly possible? And what do you actually mean when you say it? That's the question. I'm thinking about it because my wife and I recently rewatched the magnificent Ted Lasso. And if you have not watched the series Ted Lasso, I just am happy for you, because it's kind of like when we used to have cash. Remember when you would find a $20 bill that you had forgotten you put in your jeans and it came through in the wash? That's what I think about if you've not watched Ted Lasso. It is waiting for you. These entire 3 seasons of incredible joy. Well, the series finale, and I'm not giving anything away by talking about this one snippet from that episode. The series finale has a character named Roy Kent who is finally ready to open up to other men. And his question is, can people change? And the reason why he's asking is because some things have happened that have frustrated him and disappointed him, because, as he says, I've been busting my rear to change for the last year. And it seems, because of some incident that just happened, I haven't moved an inch. I haven't done any changes whatsoever, and I was hoping to become somebody different than me. And so it sets off a discussion. Is it possible for people to change? First answer, Trent Krim says, I don't think so. He said maybe we don't change per se, but we may just accept who we've always been. Interesting answer. And I'm guessing an answer that you may have thought of as well. It may be one of those answers that we change depending on what age we happen to be, what phase of life we're in at the time. Later in life, maybe it's this, look, I recognize I've tried to change, I haven't. There are these things that have always remained the same, and so no, we don't change, I just have to accept. It's a paradoxical answer, actually. Because what if choosing to accept how you've always been is a dramatic change? What if you've been resisting that acceptance your whole life, and your resistance of it has led you to develop habits, instincts, personalities, behaviors, patterns? And then when you finally choose to accept, then that is the change that actually you've been wanting to make or needing to make. This is why the question's difficult. Because when we start to unpack it, there are so many possible meanings of it. And that's why I like the questions underneath the question. Like, who do you want to change? So let's do an exercise. I want you to think right now, one person in your life who you really want to make a specific change. Who is the person? How close are they to you? Is it a person? I work with leaders. I coach leaders. That's what I do for a living. And it can, but what I love working with leaders, first of all, I want everyone to recognize you are a leader. That'll be a theme in this show a lot. You may not think of yourself as a leader because you don't have a title of that, but if you're a parent, guess what? You're a leader. If you are in a relationship with anyone, guess what? You are a leader. If you exist on the planet and interact with other humans, you have an effect on other humans. So that makes you a leader. And you may not be an intentional leader. You may not think of yourself in that way, but I'm going to hope that you interact with this show, you'll come away recognizing you are, and that's a good thing. Because leadership, I believe, is intentional influence. Now, what's interesting is you can have influence whether or not you're intentional about it, but intentionality is part of what we're looking for even in this question. Because what you're wanting to know is, all right, is this person, and I want you to think of this person, keep thinking of them, is it possible that they can make an intentional change? Like the change you want them to make. We all have these people. Maybe you've gotten to a place where you're just so resigned that they're not going to change by now. Okay. So you're accepting who they are. You're the Trent Krim answer. You're just accepting that's who they are going to be. And that might disappoint you. And because you have tried so desperately to intentionally influence their change, and it has not worked, or it has backfired at worst, that you have just come to this recognition, now, you know what, maybe people can't. So that's the first exercise. Think of the person you most desperately want to change. Do you believe in your bones that they can? Now, this is not the question as to whether they will. It's a question of whether they can. And what's interesting is we have answered that question in the positive in almost everything we've done to set up our society. You think about it. If we don't believe people can change, then why educate? Why train? Why structure anything that's based on improvement? But we've built everything based on that. Marketing is based on hoping to change, influence other people's behavior. Management is, capitalism is, everything is, education is. It's all based on this idea that we can change. And yet, We're still wondering whether or not we can. Well, no, what's interesting is because, society didn't always answer the question positively. For thousands of years, well, not really thousands, but certainly hundreds of years in the Middle Ages, the answer was no, people can't. And that's why there wasn't much education. It was for a very select few. It's why the church didn't want people to actually read holy scriptures, because they didn't believe people could change, and religion said, no, you can't. So you can't without some radical thing coming from outside into you, some revelation, your acceptance of it. But now we believe it's possible. We believe it's possible. We believe it's possible. We structure it in a way, and yet we still have doubts because we have seen people close to us unable to change. But here's another question. We're about to go into a break, and this is a great thing to be thinking about as we go in. What's the one change you have so desperately wanted to make in yourself that so far doesn't feel like you've made any progress on? Because in many ways, those are the two questions underneath this, can people change? It's either, do I dare hope that this person close to me will finally make the change that I and everyone who loves them hoping for them to make?